All right, so I invite everybody to close your eyes and take a nice big deep breath. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. Amen. And as I mentioned to Rose before we said the prayer, I am going to go just to a couple little places within the section we were reading last time, which is called The Basis of the Dream. And basically, Jesus in that section was telling us that while you're in a dream at night and you're having a dream, unless you're someone who does lucid dreaming, you don't know you're in a dream. Everything seems solid, it feels real. If you're being chased, your blood pressure will rise, your breathing will increase. And if you're in a fearful situation, you'll be fearful. Or if it's in a pleasant experience, then you'll be smiling and feeling good about it. But it's only after you wake up from the dream that you realize that you've been dreaming. And in a lot of ways, what Jesus is trying to help us understand is that we are in a, what they call daytime dream, but it's really just the same as our nighttime dream. And while we're in this daytime dream, we believe it's real. We believe it's solid. We believe the nighttime dream is, really a dream, but our daytime dream is really, really there. And in this section, Jesus described the different ways of which dreams seem to happen while we believe in them. And he talks about the idea that dreams are actually perpetual temper tantrums in which we're always saying, I want it thus. In other words, I want it my way, because my way is the answer to make me happy. Or at least that's what we think when we're identified with the ego. But what's really happening is when we chose for separation, we identified with the ego, we had this guilt, sin, and fear in our mind, which we couldn't tolerate. So we projected it into a dream, and we became the hero of the dream, and all the other aspects of the dream appeared to be outside of me. And while we're in this process of undoing, one of the paragraphs, actually it's paragraph 6 if you're reading along, Jesus says, the Holy Spirit, ever practical in his wisdom, accepts your dreams and uses them as means for waking. So what that basically means is he's going to take the dream that we are totally enmeshed in, and he's going to use it as a means to undo it. Instead of, have it just disappear in terror, he's going to use it. And then his next line says, you would have used them to remain asleep. And the reason why we choose to stay asleep is because we don't want to face the fact that we were the ones that chose to separate from the love of God, and that it's not working out too well. That's one of the reasons why we begin to be motivated to look for a different answer. When Helen and Bill recognized that every time they would go into a meeting, it was this argument fest, and it was not a very pleasant experience. And one of them looked at the other and said, there must be another way. And the other responded, yes, there must be another way. And for whatever reason, most of the people in this group, or all the people in this group, have, whether you consciously had that awareness that you asked that question or not, somehow you asked internally for an answer that this world is not providing, because this world is definitely not have the answers we're looking for, because I think we've all attempted to make the world a better place. We've hoped for that next thing, and we got the next thing. It was nice, but then eventually we realized we really had another empty bag. So he says, I said before that the first change before dreams disappear is that your dreams of fear are changed to happy dreams. So in the process of practicing the Course, we will change those fearful dreams to happy dreams. We're not going to totally disappear, and I think that's something that's a little bit frightening for most of us. We're not ready to let go of our bodies. We're not ready to just go into enmesh into oneness. But as we practice the process of the Course, we will change those fearful dreams to happy dreams. And I think a lot of people that have been involved in the Course for some time recognize that they either don't stay in the fearful situations as long as they used to. They're not quite as terrified as they used to be. Maybe when they're going through something uncomfortable, there is this awareness in their mind of, you know, I've gotten through things in the past. I'm sure I'll make it through this. So slowly our awareness of the solidness of the dream starts to dissipate. Let's see. So that is what the Holy Spirit does in a special relationship. He does not destroy it or snatch it away from you, but he does use it differently as a help to make his purpose real for you. And we talk about the idea of the ego set this all up so that it would appear that I'm an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control. And if those people or those situations would change, then I could be okay. And what the Course is trying to help us understand is you can blame anything, anyone in the world, every experience you have, but that's never going to bring you to the right mind and heal your mind, because the answer does not lie in the dream of the ego.
Marianne?
Yes.
Yeah. I was listening to Ken, and I realized that if one word that sums up the Course is same. Because
Yes.
same, not sane.
Same, yes.
Same, because the ego does not understand same at all.
Correct. Yeah. And actually, Jason, before you used to come to the class, I had these magnets, and I would pass them around because I think they were very helpful. Whenever we're addicted to the ego, we are attracted to separateness, to differences and whatever. And there's this wonderful section, well, wonderful in truth, but that doesn't sound nice, is that we actually send out these feelers that find things of difference and lay them bloodily at the feet of the person, because that's what we send out. Show me things that are going to take my peace away, because the only way I can play the part of an innocent victim is to have experiences where I'm an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control. And a lot of what the healing process is that ultimately we are the same. We're not different. You know, in this chart, we're different. That's the whole deal. And over here, we realize what we are the same. And that's the undoing process that begins to take us to that place that we just read, where this will become a happier dream, because I'm no longer making my brother the bad guy so that I can exist in separation. And that's a big deal.
Well, that's, you know, I've been looking for a while, actually,
Okay.
just a word or something like that to ground me in the Course.
Okay.
And that's the word I found.
Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. And then he goes on to say, the special relationship will remain not as a source of pain and guilt, but as a source of joy and freedom. And the reason why it would be a source of pain and guilt is because we see ourselves different from our brother. And the way we come to joy and freedom is when we begin to see our brother as the same. You know, keep remembering, and I always talk about the idea we have to drop our investment in what we accept and what we believe is real in a situation in order to recognize what it's like here. I cannot walk from over here to over here and leave my brother behind, because we are the same. In oneness, we are all one. Only in duality are we different. So that is a good connecting word, Jason. All right, it will not be done for you, for therein lies its misery. It's when it's kill or be killed, one or the other. We're different. We never can come together. And I often have come to the realization of how, you know, all of us think, oh, I want a relationship where that person just totally understands me and then everything would be wonderful. Well, that's never going to happen, because in duality, we can't be the same as another. It doesn't exist there. That's not an option in this storyline. So a great deal of us understanding how to come to that sameness is to understand what we did and how we're invested in the differentness. You know, kill or be killed is one of the definitions right after guilt, sin, and fear. So I play it out when we project it into the world. It gets played out in the world. It's you against me, whether it's you're better than me or I'm better than you. It doesn't matter. It's always a competition. And in oneness, there's nothing to be competitive against. We're the same. That whole game gets, you know, slam dunked. It doesn't exist any longer. All right, so we are now going to move on to a section that's called the hero of the dream. And as most of you see, the big hero in the middle of the chart here, which is very purposefully done, because in any dream, we are the hero, the central character, I guess you could call it. The main character. You know, if you go to a movie, and sometimes we go to movies because we like certain movie stars. So if that movie star is the main character, there'll be other characters around it to support it. But that one main character is the one that's the main one. Well, literally within the concept of the dream, we are the main character. We are the hero of the dream. Now, I looked up the word hero in the dictionary, not the course, but the dictionary, and it says a hero is a person who is idealized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. I'll read that again. Person who is idealized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. Now, this hero is not that. In fact, when I was making this chart, I kept trying to find a Superman kind of thing, and it just didn't work out. And I'm kind of glad I didn't, because that really would represent an image of somebody that's the savior, somebody's out there protecting or whatever. And this hero really doesn't fit into that description. So Rose sent me this little quote this week, which I want to share, because this is from Ken, and it's from one of his tapes. But I think it really describes not just what the ego is, but it will be a good definition, I guess you could say, for the section that we are going to begin to read. It says, all the body is an embodiment of the thought of the ego. That is all it is. It's the thought of the ego in a body, in flesh and form. We are now that. That is our self-concept. The Son of God's awareness is in the world as a body. But instead of seeing sin, guilt, and fear within me, within my mind, I now see it all around me. Okay? The reason I'm afraid now is because of all the sinful people around me, all the sinful things around me, all the sinful weather which will attack me, the sinful president, or who makes decisions that will attack me, or sinful viruses or microorganisms that will attack me, not to mention all the sinful people who will do sinful things to me. The purpose is to keep us mindless by rooting us in the world of bodies. As long as I believe I am a body at the mercy of other bodies, it will never, ever occur to me that I am a mind, which means I am now living in a perpetual state of mindlessness. If I am not a mind, I cannot change it. If I cannot change my mind, the original decision for the ego is preserved forever. And kind of along with your word, Jason, of same, Ken would often say that the number one most important thing about the Course is to recognize that we are not mindless. We do have a mind that can choose to realign with who we are. But as long as we're enmeshed within the dream, we don't realize that we do have a mind. And even if I'm not ready to choose to align with the Holy Spirit, I now know there is a mind I can choose that will undo this dream that we cling to so desperately. So I think that's a lot of information. So I'm going to go through it line by line because I think it will really.
What page are you on?
That is not a page. It's actually a quote from one of Ken Wapnick's tapes. It was called Teaching and Learning.
Right, Marianne. But
Yes.
the other thing is that the same is how you do that, how you exercise that choice, right? You're either seeing it as same or different.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And think about it. In duality, it's more than one, always. Okay. And in duality, we've got one or the other, always. And in sameness, that party's done. It ends. Because in sameness, you can't have an argument. You can't have a conflict. You can't have a one's better than the other. When we're the same, it's equal ground. So the whole game, you might say, of the ego thought system has to be dropped in order to be able to access that sameness.
So just not to, I just want to expand upon this just a little bit.
Yep.
Because so if we're seeking sameness, are we seeking sameness of thought, like that the other person eats breakfast and they go to the bathroom and they do that and they're same, or that they're also striving for God and they have a separated part and a not so separated part? I mean, when we're looking at sameness, how do we put that into practice?
Well, I would say, as with many things in the course, we're going to put it into practice the opposite way that you think you should do it, which is to recognize how often you don't see your brother the same.
Right. Okay.
Because it's really by observing how I've chosen a world of unsameness and how I've been duped into responding and reacting to the differences in the world and how quickly that catches my attention. And just by observing that, you know, hopefully here instead of within the dream, because this represents out of the dream, not a whole lot of space there for that, but this is really outside the dream, where you take your awareness off of this fell off of Jason. Okay, while your focus is on Jason, the character, the hero, the main character, you see it as Jason in relationship to everything else. When you can drop that, and my paper fell off, so I'm not going to be able to stick it on here, but if you're outside of the dream observing Jason playing those games, you're really outside of the dream. You're not in the dream at that moment. And so it's really our awareness that's going to lead us to an understanding of what sameness is. It's not really me trying to figure out what sameness is going to be. It's more me recognizing how enmeshed I am in differences, but observing it from afar rather than as Jason.
So, like, just to make it a little bit more concrete, if I'm playing a video game and
Okay.
I have somebody else that I'm fighting against somewhere in the world,
Right.
That's obviously differences, right? I'm
Absolutely.
emphasizing differences. I'm not emphasizing sameness, right?
Correct.
But it's just a matter of acknowledging that these
Yes.
are differences.
Right. And I would say, you know, I think we oftentimes, despite the fact that this is carried over with everything, but really look more in those moments where you're in conflict rather than just generally walking around during the daytime. If you're in conflict with somebody, you want to be right. They want to be right. End of story. And that's where the walls are placed. When one of you in the midst of that can go, wait a minute, I want to align with my right mind. I want to observe what's going on. I want to connect with truth. You've then taken two pieces of brick and you've made it so that we can mesh into that and see a oneness rather than separate needs and separate wants. And, you know, those are not easy moments to do that, because if we're set, which we are very addicted to being set, of I'm right and you're wrong, there's no way I want to let go of my power stance. And that's, you know, where the course talks about workbook lesson number 5. I'm never upset for the reason I think. I'm not upset at that person because of what they're doing. I'm upset because I've chosen to live in the dream. And I've turned my back on what truth is. And so when I can grasp that in those moments, which again takes great practice and diligence because we're so addicted to responding out of kill or be killed, we can slowly pull away from the attachment of the dream, and then we will be shown what oneness is or sameness is versus duality. That help?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so all the body is an embodiment of the thought of the ego. So the ego thought system is here. Ego, guilt, sin, and fear, kill or be killed. Then we project it. And again, think of this as a movie theater. We know you go into a movie theater, there's a projector, there's a light, and then there's a film that gets placed in front of the light. You could call the body the film. Okay, the light was covered up by this film. We now see that projected on the screen, and now we believe the screen is real and solid. And you could call that screen the same thing as a dream. We know Tom Hanks or whoever your favorite movie star is not on the screen. We know that intellectually, but that doesn't mean that while we're watching that movie, we don't react and get happy and sad and scared or whatever, because we are so enmeshed in that dream at that moment, or that movie at that moment, that we forget that it's not even real. We walk out of the dream or out of the movie theater, and then we'll talk about it, and we know it's not real, but while we're enmeshed in it, it feels very real. And I don't know how many of you read the book Illusions, but there's a chapter in there where there's a master and his student, and the master invites the student to go see a movie. And they're in the movie theater, and halfway through the movie, the master says, "Come on, let's go." And the guy's going, "What are you talking about? Let's go. We're just in the middle of the movie. I want to see how this ends." He said, "Come on, let's go." And they walk out, and the student's going, "Well, what did you make me leave the movie for? I wanted to see what the end looked like." He said, "That's how involved we are in our movie, our dream, our life. And that's why we don't want to let it go, because we are so enmeshed in it. It's so, and with this, it's not only a visual thing, it's feeling, hearing, sensing. All my senses are enmeshed in that thought system. So for me to step away, even for a second, and observe what's going on is huge. And slowly, as we step away, this dream becomes less solid, and the connection with sameness or oneness starts to come together. All right. So that is all. We are just an embodiment of the thought of the ego. And what's the thought of the ego? Guilt, sin, and fear, separation, differences. And now we play it out on the screen of my life. That is all it is. It's the thought of the ego in a body, in flesh, and in form. But we have to understand that not only is it that, but we've been playing this role of being in the solidness of the embodiment our whole lives, and many of us have probably had many other lives where we've continued to play this storyline over and over and over. So we're very enmeshed in it. It doesn't feel like I'm just playing a part in a play. It feels like this is my part, my play, and I'm the main character. And on some level, we really like that, which we'll go into as we begin with the next session. So our self-concept, it becomes our self-concept. The Son of God's awareness is in the world as a body. We only know ourselves as a body. Even if we attempt to do meditation, maybe we'll have a moment after half an hour where we'll have that, letting go of the body for a split second. And then we oftentimes will go into fear after that happens for some of us. And it's like really hard for us to even imagine what being without this character, this identity, this self-concept would be. And that's why the Course is saying, as you have the little willingness to drop the investment in the dream, when you want to connect with the Holy Spirit, that will take you to the awareness of oneness and sameness, not from a fearful place, but it'll gradually happen as we keep choosing to align with this. Because every moment of every day, we're either aligned with this or we're aligned with this. And whichever one we're aligned with is going to be the car that's going to run. And we've invested in this, if we just take this lifetime, and everybody's a little different age in the group, but we've invested in this thought system or this way of being, and this feels natural and normal. So it's not easy for us to even imagine what oneness would be like or peace would be like. But instead of seeing sin, guilt, and fear within me, within my mind, I now see it all around. And this is the biggest trick of this concept of the dream. This is no longer in my mind. I'm going to take my guilt, sin, and fear and disperse it out into the world, into other people and other situations. I'm off the hook. I'm still separated from the love of God, but I am no longer responsible because I am now the innocent victim, and all these other things are what the problem are. And if it wasn't for them, I could be at peace. And the Course is, sorry, no, that's not the way this works. You're not at peace because you chose to be in separation, you chose to play in the dream, and you really left your oneness or the peace. So we can't any longer point a finger at somebody else, but we can use the trigger of what somebody else does, says, acts, whatever, what happens in the world as a reminder. Oh, I just lost my peace. That has to mean I'm identified with the ego. And now I can drop that and choose again if I want to, because I now know I do have a mind that can choose differently. As long as we were totally enmeshed in the dream before, we had no way out. We were stuck in the dream. And that's how the ego set it up, so that we would be stuck in the dream with no way out. The reason I'm afraid is because all of the sinful people around me, all the sinful things around me, the sinful weather, which will attack me, the sinful president who makes decisions that will attack me, the sinful microorganisms or viruses that will attack me, not to mention all the sinful people who do sinful things to me. So we literally have, and I use the word, a bazillion different things that can draw our attention within the world that say, this is it. It's like a flag. Look at this one. We're going to play with this one today. And we go, yep, you're right. If it wasn't for that, I could be at peace. And we go down that road and we start chasing after ways of having that problem be solved within the world, because I'd rather do that than go back to the love of God, because that's how afraid I am of it. But we're starting to become aware that choosing for the love of God is a good idea. It's not a bad idea. And as we start to recognize, we can chase after so many different avenues within the world, but I think we are all old enough to know that, I get the new whatever, and it really doesn't fulfill or complete that wholeness that I'm looking for in my heart at this time. So the purpose is to keep us mindless by rooting us in a world of bodies. And I think we would all agree this has worked quite nicely and kept us at bay of knowing that we have another way to choose to connect with the Holy Spirit instead of play in the dream. But the dream still pulls us in. It's very powerful. We've given it a great deal of investment with our belief system. In and of itself, it's absolutely nothing. It's like a balloon. And if I had a pin, I could prick it and it would disappear. But to the degree that we've invested in it being real, it appears and is experienced as being real for us. As long as I believe I'm a body at the mercy of other bodies, I will never, ever occur to me that I am a mind, which means I am now living in a perpetual state of mindlessness. So as long as we're lost in the dream, we're experiencing mindlessness. We're asleep. We don't know there's a way out. We keep recycling within the context of the dream. But the Course says, wait a minute, there is another way. And that way is you're not mindless. You do have a part of your mind that can connect with truth. I am not a mind. If I am not a mind, I cannot change it. In other words, as long as I'm enmeshed in the dream with no way out, then I'm done. The answer can't be found. I will just continue to seek but do not find within the world of something that cannot provide an answer for me. If I cannot change my mind, the original decision for the ego is preserved forever. And understand that the dream was made up from the ego to keep us stuck within the dream so we can believe we killed off God and we're not responsible. And something or somebody else is responsible. All right, so I see a couple questions and then I'll open it up for everybody. All right, incredible quotation. Oh yes, it's a beautiful section. Thank you for sharing that, Rose. I agree. All right, somebody said welcome then. All right, so we got that. So anybody else have any comments before we move on to the next session? All right, so again, thank you, Rose, for sharing that with me, because boy, it was just fit right in with what I wanted to begin to work on. All right, so I don't see any comments or questions. So we are going to move on to the section. It's on page 585 in the text. It's called The Hero of the Dream. And if you don't have the book with the text numbers, it's text chapter 27, section 8, paragraph 1. And this section really goes into great deal of the way the ego sees the body and how it manipulates the body and what the purpose of the body is all about. All right, so paragraph 1. The body is the central figure in the dreaming of the world. There is no dream without it, nor does it exist without the dream in which it acts as if it were a person to be seen and believed. It takes the central place in every dream, which tells the story of how it was made by other bodies, born into a world outside the body, lives a little while and dies, to be united in the dust with other bodies, dying like itself. In the brief time allotted it to live, it seeks for other bodies as its friends and enemies. Its safety is its main concern. Its comfort is its guiding role. It tries to look for pleasure and avoid the things that would be hurtful. Above all else, it tries to teach itself its pains and joys are different and can be told apart. And as always, I'll read it line by line. The body is the central figure in the dreaming of the dream. Now we know almost every story you tell is a story, you're part of that story. Or in your dreams at night, almost always, and I'm not saying they 100%, but almost all dreams are a dream where I'm one of the characters within the dream. This character, called me, is very vital and very important to the dream of the hero, the ego. Without it, as it says, the dream would collapse. And so if you think about it from the ego standpoint, which was to make an experience where we would stay very stuck in it and never remember we had another choice, I think it picked a really good way of doing that, because we all know how enmeshed we are with this body that we call ourselves. In fact, if we're really honest, we know that literally everything we do, almost 24 hours a day, has to do with my body, to feed it, to clothe it, to build a house, and then I have to fix the house so it looks nice, and I have to do this, and then I have friends because it's good to have friends, and then I have enemies. The whole thing is always evolved around the central figure called me. And so when we talk about dropping the concept of the dream and connecting with oneness, which ultimately means there is no me. How could I possibly face that, look at that and go, sure, let's go on over here, because that sounds like a really good idea. What, you mean you want me to drop me? Not going to happen right away. It's going to take us a great deal of willingness to let go of the illusion for us to come to the point where we really understand the valuelessness of my body. But he's, again, not asking us to pretend I'm not a body. In fact, in the beginning, I think it's chapter 1, there's a place where he says, though the body's nothing, we're going to use the body, again, give it a different purpose. Not the ego purpose, but the purpose of the Holy Spirit to undo it through the body. So don't pretend you're not a body. That's not helpful or beneficial in the context of the undoing of this. Because when I stub my toe, I can walk around all day long saying I'm not a body. In fact, I know there's quite a number of workbook lessons that say I'm not a body, I am free, I am as God created me. But I could walk around all day long saying that affirmation, stub my toe, and immediately I know I'm a body. And so we're supposed to be using our identification with our body to really use that to observe how identified I really am with this body, and smile at it and recognize, wow, I am the central figure of this dream I'm dreaming. And no, you know what? I really don't want to let it go. Show me how to let it go. And that way you use every scenario where you are, being honest, being not denying what's going on, but then you use it to step to the other side. There is no dream without it, nor does it exist without the dream, in which it acts as if it were a person to be seen and to be believed. Well, the trick is, we really believe that we were popped into the world when our parents had sex, and then 9 months later we showed up, and we're really an innocent victim of this. Of course, is really telling us that's not the case. We set it up this way, then we popped into the world. We made it in a way where literally I had to depend on other people to survive, because we as humans literally absolutely could not have existed and survived if it hadn't been for caretakers. And of course, our caretakers are one of these things here, that sometimes they may be good to us, sometimes they're not so good to us. And so that whole dynamics of kill or be killed and difference gets set up when we take our very first breath. But that's because of the setup that took place before the dream started to occur. It takes, in other words, my hero, my body. Yes.
And I want to address this actually.
Yep, go for it.
Because if you're a Course in Miracles student and you have a child, you're still going to raise your child to be independent, and
absolutely,
you're going to do everything that every other parent does, right?
Yes, correct.
Are you just going to tell the child at some age this isn't real?
Well,
Sure.
I think that's a really good question. And actually, I had children as I was working through the course, and maybe before that actually. And I think the best thing you can do is live the course. This isn't about cramming, and I know people will say, oh man, I wish I had this when I was growing up. I wish I had that. It's not the answer. The answer is, it's going to come to you when it comes to you. And Ken would always, always, always say, act normal in the world. If you have children and that's your responsibility to raise those kids, you teach your kids like everybody else. But in the living of the course, in the living of your connection with that truth, they're going to benefit from that, not by your words, but by your presence in their life. Does that answer the question okay? Yeah.
Yeah, for now.
And it's a good question. And my daughter started doing the course when I started doing the course. And before that, my husband and I did metaphysics. And, my kids got some of that stuff from osmosis, whether they liked it or not. But that didn't mean they didn't have conflicts, because the turnaround of that is, they had an understanding that most kids their age didn't have, so they really didn't fit in. So they had kill or be killed, and this is different than that in a different form. So it's always going to be played out, not because of the outside things, but because we're identified with this character called me.
Mary Ann,
Yes, Bob.
that Ken Wapnick says that you should not start the course until at least after the age of 35, and sometimes much later than that, because you have to be in the ego long enough to see that the ego does not work.
Right. And for the most part, most people that are drawn to the course usually are around that age group or older. But that doesn't mean occasionally, I mean, because I would go to the foundation and sometimes young people would come and it was like they might have gotten it from another time, another lifetime or whatever. But in the general rule, most people will be looking for an answer beyond the world because the world didn't work the way it was promised to work. And then we start falling into, there's got to be another way. And then we begin searching beyond what we've been told or what we understand within the context of the world. Yep. All right. So the body takes a central place in every dream, which tells the story of how it was made by other bodies, born into the world outside the body, lives a little while and dies to be united in the dust with other bodies dying as itself. Well, that pretty well sums up the dream of the ego. But we're so enmeshed in it. What was that movie, which I always forget the name of, where the guy was born on the TV set, and so he never knew. Somebody help me out. Does anybody know what I'm talking about?
The Truman Show.
What was it?
The Truman Show.
Yes, the Truman Show. Okay. That's a perfect example if you've seen that movie. He only knew life from the TV set. He didn't know it the way our lives were, but we don't know anything but the way our life is unfolded within the context of the dream, because we're asleep in the dream. And so to even think about questioning, there's something wrong here, literally doesn't show up very often. But in the context of that movie, he would start to get little glimpses of awareness of, one time the elevator opened up and there were movie cameras watching him or whatever. And it was like, what's going on with that? And I think every one of us, even in very subtle ways, have had moments in our lives long even before you came to the course where something's not right here. Something's not connecting. Why doesn't this fit the way it's supposed to fit? And so we have these glimpses, and literally, in my way of looking at it, the course is giving us an opportunity to have more of those glimpses by helping us understand what the setup of this is and how we got into this in the first place and why it's so challenging for us to separate from it. Because if you think about from the day you were born, and again, we're just going to use this lifetime, the moment you were born to today, your entire life has been enmeshed in this belief system of I'm body and I'm in relationship to the rest of this dream. And to pull ourselves away from that is not an easy thing to do. And, we go through life trying to find good. And even when we get it, we find out it's not so good or bad or whatever it happens to be. So it's like it's helping us wake up to an understanding of how we can see the world differently so that we can choose more frequently to connect with the oneness and the sameness. I'm going to read that line again because it really, it sums up the world. The body takes the central place in every dream, which tells the story of how it was made by other bodies. It was my mom and dad's fault, not mine. Born into a world outside the body of that parent, lives a little while. I mean, we're all living for a little while, and then we're going to die, and we're going to unite in the dust where other bodies lie, or bodies dying like ourselves, or like itself. This is the story of bodies on planet Earth. It's the same old boring story, no matter who we are. Some of us are richer or poorer or whatever, more better looking or whatever, but we're all playing in that same little sentence. In the brief time allotted it to live, it seeks for other bodies as friends and enemies. Well, isn't that what we do? We're trying to find people that will support us, people that will, tell us they like us. And then we repel from people that are our enemies and blame them for taking our peace away. But even the friends oftentimes end up, they're my friend and my best friend for three years, and then they find another best friend, and suddenly that best friend is no longer the best friend anymore. Because even in the context of the quote unquote good of the Course, there is the downside of that, of what if I lose that friend or that companion. All right, so safety is its main concern. And, think about all the ways that we find ways to be safe in the world. We have to lock our cars, we have to lock our house, we have to get insurance, we've got to do all these things to help maintain a semblance of protectedness. And it's really absurd. Remember years ago when my kids were very little, I locked myself out of the apartment. The kids were inside, my husband was at work, and it was wintertime and I had shorts on, so I had to go across the street and ask them if they'd call the police. And they said, well, we could call them, but you could probably just break in your house. So I broke into my own house with a rock or something. I mean, if I can break into my own house, is locking the door really going to bring me safety? And the answer is no, but that doesn't mean you don't go through all those steps and become more and more aware of how quickly my safety is taken away from me. If somebody cuts you off on the highway, that moment, someone could kill me. They could take my body away. That gasp of breath that we have when that moment occurs is something could take me away. And that's how attached we are to the identity of this body being who I am. We talked a little bit about death last week and why it is so uncomfortable for most people, especially in this country, to release their bodies because we're so attached to them. Its comfort is its guiding rule. Make sure the temperature's right in this room. I got to have comfortable clothing. I've got to have this. My seat's got to be comfortable. My food's got to be the right way. And look at how many ways where we're attempting to fine tune our dream to make it comfortable so that I'd be willing to take the next day of my life. And I have to do that tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day, because that's what bodies are all about. It tries to look for pleasure and then avoids the things that would be hurtful. Well, within the context of the dream, you have to understand that Jesus tells us we're insane, but he never tells us we're stupid. Of course, we're going to try to avoid things that are hurtful, and we're going to look for things that are pleasurable or painful. But in the search of all that, we don't get that nothing within the dream of the ego is ever going to take us to a place of peace. And no matter how much searching for pleasure or good things in the world we have, it's never going to fill the need or the requirement that we're really looking for, which is a love that is unconditional. We search for love, as they say, in all the wrong places. I mean, we're doing our best we know how, and within the context of the dream, yeah, that was a way better idea than not having anything like that, but ultimately that always fails us. Above all, it tries to teach itself its pains and joys are different and can be told apart. And as I just mentioned, within the context of the dream, yes, there appear to be, the good and the bad and the pleasure and the pain, but in truth, you're either in the dream or you're awakened from the dream. And while you're in the dream, you're not really experiencing pleasure, because pleasure doesn't really live within the dream. But within the context of the dream, and we just take this little guy over here, we know some aspects of the dream are, not less appealing. Some of them are a little bit more appealing. But compared to this, that doesn't even come close to comparing it. And we've been chasing, the lighter cloud that seems to be more comfortable or more pleasurable, and avoiding the darker clouds, thinking that that's really what we want to accomplish, when the truth is what we want to do is move the cloud away so that we are part of the sun, where Jesus is. All right, anybody have any comments about that paragraph? Because that really sums up a great deal of the basic concepts of what this body's all about, plain and simple. Even though we don't, I'm sure many of you might have a little bit of a challenge really listening to those words and going, well, what do I do now? Or what's that all about? Any comments?
Yeah, Mary, and I have
Go ahead,
one.
Rose.
Going back to the pleasure thing, I heard Ken say this recently, and I know I've heard him say it many times before, but it clicked better this time.
Okay.
That the only reason we seek pleasure, and this is a very helpful awareness. The only reason we seek pleasure is so that we can be the victim when the pleasure ends.
Yes, isn't that delightful?
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason that we seek it. And it was like, wow, that's,
Well,
yeah,
but if
I can see that.
Yes, and if you think about that from the context of my number one goal, I guess you could say, as an ego, is that I'm an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control. So I have a little bit of good, but oh yeah, the bad's got to come with it. And then when the bad comes, I can then be the innocent victim again. And even usually in relationships that there is pleasure or preferences or whatever words you want to use, they're never going to do it right all the time. So even in the midst of a relationship that it would be what's considered to be the special relationship, in a special love relationship in the Course, it's got a whole lot of holes in that bucket. Yeah. Yes. And I remember Ken talking about a relationship when this guy, somebody had left him, and he said, oh yeah, it hurts so good. And again, from the perspective of the ego. But that's why it's so important for us to really understand what we got ourselves into. Not from a place of feeling bad because this is what I've chosen, but as an understanding of this is what I've chosen, but to slowly get the picture that, do I really want to keep choosing this?
Right. Just noticing that I want to be a victim in every situation. Every situation. And just noticing that.
Yes. And I highly doubt, and I could be mistaken, that seldom would an individual come upon that awareness without the help of the Course. I mean, we're just so enmeshed in this, and the way it's set up is something takes my peace away. I go down that road of, how dare they, blah, 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 call your friends, do the whole deal. And I just enmesh myself around that. And then the next time it happens, I do the very same thing, even if it's the same scenario. And I know Rose and I were talking yesterday of how we're really pretty boring. We're triggered by the same identical things over and over and over again, but it just doesn't occur to us, what am I doing here? Until we start to understand a little bit better what the Course is saying and realize we're not mindless and there is another choice, and I can choose it when I'm ready to.
Both pleasure and pain and depression and that sort of thing, they're all chemicals in our brain, right?
Yes, correct, Jason. And I've read articles where they put electrodes on people and had a pleasurable experience and then a painful experience, and the same reaction actually occurred in the body. So again, it's the highs and the lows of the dualistic experience. Tricky stuff, very tricky stuff.
Yeah, and the high is just, I'm a victim.
Right.
Whatever it is.
And the most important part of that is I can say I'm an I.
Yeah.
Because I thrive to be an I. I don't want to have I taken away. me, this character, this personality, all my prejudices, all my belief systems, all my everything is encompassed in what I accept as who I am. And it's very tricky to skim off some of those, or to be willing to skim off is probably a better way to say it, to skim off all those layers of maybe I don't know the answer. And again, that beautiful workbook lesson number 5, I'm never upset for the reason I think. When I really get that I'm not upset because he, she, they, them did this, or the coronavirus, or this, or the mask, or no mask, whatever's taking your peace away. That's not the problem. The problem is I've chosen for the ego instead of for love. And, you know, I don't know, probably a year ago, I worked on some classes around the idea, and I mentioned the idea of the Karate Kid and how he was given instructions to wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. And he got very frustrated with his teacher after some time because, you know, what value is that? And I think a lot of times with the Course, we could parallel that in that a lot of the stuff it's asking us to do feels like wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. What good does that do to me? I've got to pay my bills, and I've got kids to take care of, and I've got, why do I need to do this? But by that constant dropping of this and aligning with this becomes more identified, this becomes less identified, and this literally starts to fall away automatically of its own, because you're choosing to align with the mind that can make a difference. And I know it can be, I guess you could say, frustrating at times, because it feels like we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and my life's not getting any better, or if it does get better, then it gets worse again. Keep on doing it. Keep on doing it. All right, on to paragraph 2. The dreaming of the world takes many forms because the body seeks in many ways to prove it's autonomous and real. To put things on itself that it has bought with little metal discs or paper strips, the world proclaims as valuable and real. It works to get them, doing senseless things, and tosses them away for senseless things it does not need and does not even want. It hires other bodies that may protect it and collect more senseless things that it can call its own. It looks about for special bodies that it can share its dream. Sometimes it dreams it is the conqueror of bodies weaker than itself, but in some phases of the dream, it is the slave of bodies that would hurt and torture it. All right, so the dreaming of the world takes many forms because the body seeks in many ways to prove it is autonomous and real. And a few weeks ago, I real quickly scribbled this, show that Ken, dropping my papers all over the floor, but that's okay. Ken, sorry, my circle's not too circular, but Ken gave the example of, if you think of all these dots as when that tiny tick of time occurred where the Son of God splintered off into the dream, each one of the little specifics chose one of these little dots to live out. And so each one of those dots represents a different storyline. And as it said, the body's serial adventures from time of birth to dying, wait a minute, sorry, wrong paragraph. The dreaming of the world takes many forms. So one person's rich, one person's, not, and another person's tall and the other one's short. All those differences are encompassed in one of those dots that this particular lifetime we popped into being one of those dots. And the only thing, and back to Jason's comment about sameness, is the sameness of each of those dots is that each of us come with a dream of, I'm going to be an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control. So it doesn't matter the specifics of that specific form that take place in the world. It's that each and every one of us are the same in the world, in that we're all an innocent victim, seemingly an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control, which we love. Because the only way I can be an innocent victim is to have a perpetrator. So I live and breathe literally by having my perpetrators. Now, as Marianne, I could sit in my chair here and tell you unequivocally there is no way I want perpetrators in my world. And from my point of view, 100% correct. But in the setup of this story, incorrect. This guy is required for me to be an innocent victim. And the reason why I want to be an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control is because I don't want to own that it was the Son of God's choice to separate from the love of God. So we defray it, project it into the world, and play this silly game of which I picked one of these things to be the problem today so that I can appear to be an innocent victim. And, you know, there's songs that talk about love makes the world go round. This is what makes the world go round. Only we don't know that before we start. And what Jesus is trying to help us understand is this is the package you bought, guys. You ordered it from the Sears catalog. This is what it comes with. And so as you begin to really look at what we ordered, really question it through the point of view of this is what I ordered. I ordered a package that I get to be an innocent victim forever, to make my brother appear to be the problem so that I can survive on planet Earth and forget that I have the guilt, sin, and fear in my mind. And after a while, that gets very tiring and not much fun. And then eventually we will begin to step away from our investment in what we have chosen. And when it talks about it, that it's autonomous, that really means self-governed. I think I am in charge of my world. But as we've done some work around little Kenny, we know that in truth, we're just a little puppet. We're being operated, dropping my papers again. We're either being operated by the ego, or when I choose to align with the Holy Spirit, then I will be operated by the Holy Spirit. And when I align with the Holy Spirit, the only thing will come through is the reflection of love. When I choose for the ego, what comes out is the projection of separation, kill to be killed, differences, the whole deal. So it depends on who's operating the puppet. Well, I think I'm a very viable puppet in the world, and I have great value, and I have great say in what's going on and that whole deal. But in truth, I'm simply a puppet that's being played out by the choice that was put into place. All right, and Jesus is sort of making fun of us in the next couple of lines, but it's really what's going on. It puts things on itself that it has bought with little metal discs or paper strips. The world proclaims, proclaims as valuable and real. So he's basically saying, now that we have this body, we buy things to put on it and decorate it. And some people might not be into doing a lot around their body, but maybe they have a fancy car that they like, or maybe their houses where they put all their time and energy in. We have something that we spend our metal disc and paper strips, and we buy to proclaim that it's valuable and it's real. Now, it would make it sound, by reading that would mean you're never supposed to go out shopping, and you're never supposed to buy a new car, you're never supposed to do any of those, put makeup on or whatever. But that's not really what it's saying either. It's saying, observe this, become aware of how frequently this occurs and how this is what we're doing. I remember years ago, we were out looking for couches, and my couch was totally a mess. And so I don't know how many stores I went to, many, but looking for just the perfect couch. And I was thinking, I'm justified to go get this couch because my couch is really a disaster. And after a few minutes, I started realizing, well, if you really just needed a couch, you could just walk in the first door, buy the first couch you see. But no, that's not really what's going on. You want a very special, specific one to fulfill your needs. So just observe how we play these games out. And I want to also throw this out. I remember one time I was at the foundation and there was a woman there that was studying the course who had been a nun. And so she was in the convent, she didn't wear makeup and all that kind of stuff. And Ken basically said, you know, start wearing makeup, do the things people in the world do. Because she never had that experience. It was something she needed to explore. And the story of Helen being in a mall where she was walking in the mall with Jesus, and Jesus walked into the store, and this was a long time ago, so pantsuits were the rage back then, and he handed her this pantsuit and he said, here you go, this is all you're going to need. And as soon as Jesus turned and walked out the door, she ran back in the store and grabbed like 10 pantsuits. And he turned around and said to her, oh, so you think you need more than just that one I gave you? Well, if you think you do, you do. So it's not that we give up the things that we find valuable at this time, but again, observe how, how we constantly are looking for things on the outside to fill us up and make us feel better. But don't deny that that's where you are right now. But smile at it and go, oh, look at me. I'm a good little ego shopping or doing whatever it is that I like to do. And just smile at it. All right. But again, we're always putting things on ourselves or decorating our houses or our cars or whatever, your yard or whatever it is that's important to you. We work to get them, doing senseless things and toss them away for senseless things it does not need and does not even want. And isn't that the way we are? We buy new things and then we throw away the old things, and then we buy some more new things and then we throw away the old things. And it's just the way of our world here today, except for the last 3 months where we weren't allowed to go anywhere. And I think in some respects, this has given us an appreciation for when we do go out. You know, do I really need this? Is this really that important to me? It hires other bodies that may protect it and collects more senseless things that it can call its own. And again, this is what bodies do. And I think, you know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, people had 2 outfits and they washed one and wore the other one. We've gone kind of out of control here in a lot of ways with the ways we have used this collecting senseless things. It looks about for special bodies that it can share its dream, because God forbid that we would be in the dream by ourselves. We need companions to fill us up, to make us feel complete. And again, not that we're not supposed to do that. Please be very aware. In fact, if you feel you need relationships that, you know, to fulfill something in your life, by all means, enjoy those relationships. But recognize they're special relationships, that they're special love or hate relationships that can eventually be used for your healing process. So don't deny the experiences that you think you need at this time. There may come a time in the future where they're not necessary, but don't pretend them away because you think that you're not a good course student because you do these things. Sometimes it dreams it is a conqueror, a body's weaker than itself. And, you know, I think most of us probably wouldn't walk around thinking that we are conquerors of other people. But if you even have a thought of being better than somebody else or more important than somebody else, understand that you're a conqueror in your mind, even if you're not playing it out physically in the world. And it, again, as Jason used the word same, we're always in a world of comparison when we're in the world of the ego. And we're always on a subconscious level comparing ourselves to other people. And again, don't stop doing it, but become aware of how frequently that's going on in your mind, so that you become aware of how often we sit with the ego. It's our natural flow. After we chose this, we became brain dead, excuse me. We forgot there was another possibility. But as you're observing it, and you'll be observing it from over here instead of as the character, you're literally outside of the dream when you're doing that. So you're literally in a process of healing it. Alrighty, sometimes okay, we already talked about conquering, but in some phases of the dream, it is the slave of bodies that would hurt and torture it. And, the hurts could be someone gives me a dirty look. It doesn't have to be someone's got a knife or a gun and they're after me. It can be simply that subtle little irritation from somebody else. And we're being asked again to look at how frequently during your day just those subtle little ways of being occur in your life as well. And also be very aware that someone could not hurt me if I wasn't identified with the hero, the dream being who I think I am. Whenever you're over here for at least a time, you'll still have your body, but you won't be identified with your body. It's the identification with this is who I am that causes the pain to occur. Alrighty, paragraph 3. The body's serial adventure from the time of birth to dying are the theme of every dream the world has ever had. The hero of this dream will never change, nor will its purpose. Though the dream itself takes many forms and seems to show a great variety of places and events within its hero finds itself, the dream has but one purpose taught in many ways. This single lesson does it try to teach again and still again and yet once more that it is cause and not effect. And you are its effect and cannot be its cause. Alrighty. So the body's serial adventure, which I think is a really adorable little name that Jesus gave it, because isn't it what it is? It's a serial adventure with lots of stories that we defend and we talk about and we share, and that's part of what we call living and dying on planet Earth. And it starts from the moment of our birth to the dying, and every dream in the world has ever had. So again, we picked one of those dots. Doesn't really matter which dot we had picked. They all come with the same storyline. And the storyline is, I'm an innocent victim of circumstances beyond my control, as long as I play within the dream. So the hero of this dream will never change, nor will its purpose. So as long as I identify with being the hero, the story is going to remain the same. The way it gets played out, the stories that it creates, the specifics of the stories will change dramatically, but the storyline will remain identical. It's just like if you went to your English class and your teacher said, okay, it's the weekend. On Monday, I want you to bring a story. And in the story, there's going to be good people and bad people. And there's going to be an innocent victim. And there's going to be perpetrators. So your job on the weekend is to create a story based on those criteria. And that's what the criteria of the dream of the ego is all about. Though the dream itself takes many forms and sees a show of great variety of places and events wherein its hero finds itself, the dream has but one purpose taught in many ways. And again, many forms of which it gets played out, but the core thing is exactly the same. The single lesson does it try to teach again and still again, and yet once more that it is cause and not effect. All right, so we're going to stop there because we need to talk about that. So the hero of the dream is all about the recognition that I'm the cause. I think it's something that happened within the world that maybe I said the wrong thing and that's why that person's upset or mad at me. Or this is happening because I did something wrong or whatever. But the real cause, again, lies here. We chose to separate from the love of God. We had the choice to return. We said, nope, afraid of God. I'm going to come over here. But we had this guilt, sin, and fear that was terrorizing. And we thought, how can I remain within the separated state, but not be the one that's the perpetrator? So we took all the guilt, sin, and fear, dumped it in our brother, which is basically what we read that Ken wrote, or that Ken had in his workbook or in his class that time. We dump all that in the world, and now we look at the world and we see the world is the problem. If it wasn't for something in this world, I could be okay, which is a lie. Never is that going to happen and make it true, because we are not the cause, we are the effect of that choice. And the problem is what the real cause is, which is the identification with the ego. And again, this keeps the story going so that I can pull off killing off God and remain the innocent victim. Quite a story and quite a price to pay. And so I'm going to read 4 again. The single lesson does it try to teach again and still again and yet once more that it is cause and not effect, and you are its effect and cannot be its cause. So Jesus is turning that around and saying, sorry guys, no, that's not how it really happened. The cause was the belief in separation. The effect was the storyline, not the other way around. So in a way, it really lets you off the hook of being responsible for all of this, because it's not me, Marianne, or Jason, the body, that's causing the problem. The problem lies in what we chose to begin with before the body even arrived on the scene. All right, so I'm going to pause there for a moment. Does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns, irritation? Nope. All right.
Yes,
Yes, Bob, go for it.
from what I understand it, and how I understand it, is you could see something in the world, and and if it affects you,
Correct.
then it's yours.
Yes.
But if it doesn't affect you, no, it's not yours.
Well, I
You
mean,
can see it, but
I will say that's slightly different. The world, the entire dream, is an effect of the Son of God choosing to separate from the love of God and then dumping its wares within the world. Okay, but as you said, Bob, maybe, I don't know which one could we pick. Something that would happen in the dream that might affect me may not affect you, the specific thing in the dream.
Right.
So it's not like we have to go looking for stuff like that, but be very vigilant of the things that do take your peace away, and become aware that that's a hook, that's a classroom for me specifically. Yes.
And that's what I have to turn over
That's
to.
correct. Yes.
You, Marianne,
Yes.
you could also say your inner critic is a person.
Oh, huge. Thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. We don't need somebody else outside of ourselves, because understand, the body is outside of the mind. The mind is the critic, the inner critic, because the mind is coming from guilt, sin, and fear. And what could a mind with guilt, sin, and fear possibly puke out except for being an inner critic? And oh yeah, that keeps us real busy a whole lot. Yes. So thank you for
Busy all the time.
yeah. Well, of course it does. Yeah. And literally, I think eventually most of us will wake up to the awareness. I don't need anything outside. I can wake up in the morning and the inner critic is going to town, and it's not saying nice things. And I literally can remember the first time I really consciously became aware of the inner critic. And it was just jabbering away. And the funny thing that happened was something good had happened in my life. And the inner critic flipped that around and then started whining. And it was like, oh my gosh, even when something's good, you find a way to turn it around. So yeah, definitely watch your inner critic. Yeah, huge. Thank you for bringing that to light, because it's very important. And the body too, because the physical attributes of the body. Remember, we're a puppet. Does a puppet have cancer? Does a puppet have a pain in its left arm? Did a puppet stub his toe? No, it doesn't hurt the puppet. It's the belief system that the puppet believes is what it is that makes it appear that the body is having one of those experiences. And just like, you know, I described at the beginning of the class, when you're in a movie theater, Tom Hanks, you know, or somebody that's on the screen gets murdered or hurt or whatever, that actor doesn't get hurt. It's a character that's being played out through that individual. Well, that's exactly how we are, but we're so identified with this thought system, we react as though this is real because in our experience, having chosen this, having that be our cause, this appears to happen to us, but it really is happening because of our choice. Tricky stuff. Did an ironclad job. Go for it, ego. You know, that's
And we only believe that because we only believe that because we're the cause. We believe ourselves to be the cause, right?
Well, we believe we are the cause of a thought system that we believe is legitimate.
Well, I don't mean the thought system. I mean, you know, the cause of a car hitting me or something like that. As I'm driving.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, correct. We believe, you know, I didn't put on my blinker or whatever, and now whatever. We think we're the problem or the solution.
But
Okay.
there's some truth to that too, because I could go and hit cars, you know, so it's kind of a paradox, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I could just hit a bunch of cars on the freeway or cause an accident,
Right.
or at least
Yeah.
I even use the word cause an accident.
That's the way it appears, but even that is a choice coming from the mind of the ego. And you know, the ego loves to take any aspect of the understanding of this and take it to its limit. But literally, I mean, and we could say, you know, like a mass murderer. You know, is he responsible for doing that? Yeah, he physically is doing that. But again, it's his identification with the part of his mind that believes that that's the best thing he can do at that moment.
So the cause of the cause kind of thing.
Yes.
The thought that went into his mind to go murder was actually the cause of the ego.
Correct. And understand as well, you know, I mentioned a few minutes ago about writing that essay for your teacher. Well, if you take that essay of I have to be an innocent victim and there's good and bad within the world, and then we say her next step in the process of the teaching is, okay, now we're going to put on a play using your story. Well, one person in that play is going to be a bad guy. Well, the mass murderer is required to make this work. We can't have this without the bad guys in it. You know, and I would say I'm an innocent victim of the bad guys, but if I'm the one that made the dream, I made the bad guys as well as the good guys to pull this off. And then I can hate the bad guy and be justified for hating the bad guy. When in essence, I was the one that wrote him in the story to begin with so that I could play, I'm an innocent victim. You know, this is very deeply seated, guys. And it, you know, it's hard to wrap your brain. I see you, Shelley. It's really difficult to wrap our heads around this, especially when we're first learning it. But that's really what it's trying to help us understand. We've chosen a thought system that's really sick. Go ahead.
And that other person that we don't like could be ourselves too.
Absolutely. Oftentimes.
It doesn't have to be a physically other person.
Oh, no. And think about it. On a deep-seated level within, we literally believe we killed off God to exist. How could we like ourselves? Mm-hmm. It's impossible. So I sometimes give the example of, you know, when we did that, we had that guilt, sin, and fear, and we put it in the popcorn maker. And then we forgot we put it in the popcorn maker, and now it starts popping out in our head or in our world, and we go, well, who put that popcorn there? We put that popcorn there. And when somebody's aligned with oneness or sameness, they don't have popcorn that pops out that hates itself. So use that again as a place of practice of, oh my gosh, there goes my mind again, attacking myself. And I want to know who I really am, Holy Spirit, because I'm tired of this. This is not working for me any longer. And, you know, if we did nothing else but just work on our own self-hate, that would be a big step. You know, those other guys show up occasionally, give us a little practice with that too. All right.
So,
Yes.
oh, could I
Yes, I
just
hear
jump in
it.
for a second?
Yes.
It's Ben.
Yeah, Ben.
Hi. This is just incredible and beautiful conversation. And something, Marianne, that you said, a phrase that you said often is like rise when you
Above
lift
the
yourself
battleground.
above the battle.
Yes.
And it's sort of like when I begin to, and you said when you lift above the ego and sort of watch it, that's the process of healing.
Yes.
And so sort of like when you lift above the idea of the good guy, of the bad guy, and you're just in that place where you're just observing it. I'm finding more and more that when I go to that place, I am healed for like a split second, and then it goes away, because then I believe in the bad guy and the good guy again. But then
Right.
I can be healed like multiple times a day for literally seconds at a time.
Absolutely.
And it's just a joy to be in that moment and to realize it. And then of course I'm like sick again, hallucinating again, but just for the full day to be pocketed by these like small moments of healing, it's very beautiful. So thank you for your
Yes.
teaching.
Right. And those moments that you were referring to, Ben, are called the holy instants. When you rise above, and I'm sorry my dot fell off, but the dot would be above this line. Every moment we're above this line, we're not here. And in any given moment, we're either here or we're identifying with this. And the very fact that we're identifying with this means I've let go of this. And those are the moments that will accumulate, and we will spend more and more time with those holy instances over here, which will begin to diminish this automatically. I don't have to figure out how that happens, but as I keep choosing that, and then I will be the reflection of that love that I'm now identified with. And you could say the hero, the dream is like a hose that's all knotted up. You've got bazillions of little knots in it. And of course, love can't flow through it. And every time you have a holy instant, literally you're untying one of those knots. And when you untie those knots, the possibility of that love to flow through begins to happen. And eventually this will be completely dropped. You will completely align with this, which the Course calls the happy dream. And only love can flow through the vehicle called Kenny. Yeah. But you're right there. And the Course actually calls it then above the battleground. And I remember hearing stories of the astronauts, and you know, some of the astronauts are, you know, they're starting to do the space programs now. But some of the astronauts explain that after they were in space looking down at the world, all this separate stuff that we usually identify fell away, and they saw the perspective of the world from a very different place. And quite literally, that's what's going to happen as we keep rising above the battleground. And if we understand there is a battleground, what I'm looking at is a battleground. And it's not about making the battleground go away. It's about rising above the battleground and knowing that above the battleground, this doesn't really mean much any longer. And I think as we choose more and more, we have more and more awareness of what's going on. And I sometimes talk about the idea, if I'm driving down the street, I'll see a house and a car and a stop sign and a street light or whatever. But if I was in an airplane observing that car driving down the street, I could see all the things the car could see, but I could see, you know, a mile or two ahead and behind and on the sides, and I could see people walking around and whatever. So it's like every time we ask for help, it's almost like we're expanding our awareness, making that awareness more whole, more complete than our very limited little square. And you know, the Course even defines the body as this little fence around a little aspect of the whole. And we're encompassed in that. And within the context of that, we think we know something. Well, we don't know anything because we know this little tiny pinhole of information, and we're trying to literally rule the world and tell the world how to operate out of that very limited amount of information. But as we keep asking, we keep expanding our understanding of what's really going on. And I can't remember if I said this, but I'm going to say it because it's important. You're either in this awareness or you're in this awareness every instant. So the goal or the process of this is to spend more instances in this and understand that when we chose for this, we melded with the thought system of the ego. And as I said earlier in the class, we forgot we had another choice. As I can now, recognize or rise above the battleground and look at the battleground, I'm not part of the battle any longer. And that's the healing process. But one instant I'm here, and as you really beautifully spoke, I have a moment out here and then I come back here. Well, the reason why you would think I'm over here, this is great, I love it. Why don't I stay over here? And the reason why we don't stay over here is because there's things here that are still drawing us back. There's things here that need to be healed that doesn't free us completely to be just aligned with this. And a lot of that's body identification, of course. All right, anybody else have any comments? And before we go on to the next paragraph? Nope. All right, paragraph 4. Thus you are not the dreamer, but the dream. And so you wander idle in and out of places and events that it contrives. That this is all the body does is true, for it is but a figure in a dream. But who reacts to figures in a dream unless he sees them as if they were real? The instant that he sees them as they are, they have no more effect on him because he understands he gave them their effects by causing them and making them seem real. All right, so when we think we are the dream, when we think we are the character in the dream, we believe we aren't the dreamer, but we believe we are just part of the dream. We don't get that I'm the dreamer that's dreaming this character, of which one of the main characters in the dream is moi. I think I'm moi, and an effect of what's going on within the context of the dream. And so you wander idle in and out of places and events that it contrives. So of course, if this is all you know, you're going to just act like normal people in the world and do whatever everybody does and wonder, scratch your head, what the heck are we doing here sometimes? Okay, but you don't know how to get out. That this is all the body does is true, for it is but a figure in a dream. Well, we don't get that we're the figure in the dream. And as somebody said earlier, I think it was Jason, I think I have value. I think I have importance. I think I have questions or, important things to solve in the world, and I can take care of situations and whatnot. But in truth, that's not really what's happening. But that's the experience each and every one of us have. But we're simply a dream or figure in a dream. Just like your nighttime dreams. When you wake up from your nighttime dream and say your boss fired you, you don't go into work the next morning and tell your boss off because he fired you in your dream. Insane. But in our daytime dream, we play it out very differently because we believe the daytime dream has validity and the nighttime dream doesn't. And this is really all about waking up from the dream we've invested in and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced and reinforced since the Big Bang. And now our job is to unreinforce in the investment of the dream that we have made by ourselves. That this is all the body does is true, for it is but a figure in a dream. But who reacts to figures in a dream unless he sees them as if they were real? Well, guys, guess what? We believe it's real. We believe that it is, this body, this hero, this me is very important and very valuable. And all the things that, come along with the party are also equally as valuable and important. Because we've accepted this is our reality as an effect of the cause of choosing for separation. because we were afraid to go home. And as we begin to understand this intellectually more clearly, I think when we come to moments where our natural response and reaction is kill or be killed or attack, whether it's my own thoughts or somebody else's, there's like a little gap. In fact, the Course talks about a little gap of, wait a minute, do I really want to continue playing the game as it's been played out here? Or do I want to do something different? Am I willing in this moment, despite the fact that I'm so angry or so upset or so whatever, can I drop that for a moment? Can I take a deep breath and say, wait a minute, Holy Spirit, I want to align with what your answer is. I don't want this any longer. I want to order from the other catalog now. And again, the big challenge is that we still identify with this is who I am. I don't think I'm a mind. I think I am this character called Mary Ann that has a body, that has relationships, that has, you know, all the other stuff that all the rest of us have in some form or another. The instant that he sees them as they are, they have no more effect on him because he understands he gave them their effects by causing them and making them seem real. So as we start to awaken, as we start to have awareness that, wait a minute, I'm not an effect of this dream, I'm the cause of this dream. And if I'm the cause of this dream, I can be the cause of changing that dream. Not by making this dream a better dream, but by waking up from the dream, which sometimes reflects in the world as seeming like a better dream. That's not our goal. And I often like to think of Jesus dying on the cross. Most of us would not say, that's the dream I'm looking for is my happy dream. Thank you very much. But we don't really want to put a lot of emphasis on what the outcome of choosing for the Holy Spirit is, because that's not up to us. That's up to him. But it doesn't matter if it turns out physically the way I think it should. If my mind is healed, I will look at the dream and understand it and see it from a different perspective. So it really won't matter anyways. I'm going to read that last line again because it's chock full of goodies. The instant that he sees them as they are, they have no more effects on him. So when we awaken, dawn on us that this is not the answer, choosing the cause and making a different cause is the answer, that's when we will start to awaken from this dream. Because he understands he gave them their effects. I see the effects because of the cause that was chosen, and now I can choose differently. So because he understands he gave them their effects by causing them and making them seem real. And be aware, we made this seem a real. It's not really real, but don't we all believe it's real? Damn straight we do. But this is about giving the, I was going to say power, but I hate to use the power. Giving the investment in what we want now instead of what we had before a chance, a try, so we can find out if his way is a better way than ours. You know, and there's a place in the Course where Jesus says, you know, just give my way a try. You know, if this doesn't work out, you can always go back to where you were. But I think you'll like what I have if you do. Alrighty, anybody questions or comments before we go on to paragraph number 5? It's kind of quiet today. All right. Okay, paragraph 5. How willing are you to escape the effects of all dreams the world has ever had? Is it your wish to let no dream appear to be the cause of what it is you do? Then let us merely look upon the dream's beginning, for the part you see is but the second part, whose cause lies in its first. No one asleep and dreaming in the world remembers his attack upon himself. No one believes there really was a time when he knew nothing of a body and could never have conceived this world as real. He would have seen at once that these ideas are one illusion, too ridiculous for anything but to be laughed away. how serious they now appear to be. And no one can remember when they would have met with laughter and with disbelief. We can remember this if we but look directly at their cause, and we will see the grounds for laughter, not a cause of fear. So he's asking us, how willing are you to escape the effects of all the dreams the world has ever had? And we could all sit in our chair and say, well, I'm ready, let's do it. But I can assure you, I've read this section many times, and apparently I wasn't quite as ready as I thought I was, because I'm still here, playing in the game here. But he's asking us to look at the fact that are you ready to understand there's another way, and that you have the ability to choose that other way. You have the ability to make a change. You know, we set this up so we could point a finger at somebody else and say, if it wasn't for you, I could be okay. And it doesn't matter if those are voices in my head or if it's a person, a place, a situation. Something outside me, as Mary Ann, is making my peace go away. And the best news with the Course is, and the worst part of the Course is, I am now responsible for the fact that what I see in them, I've put there, and I can make a change, but that makes me responsible for being the one that needs to make the change. So do I want it bad enough to be able to be willing to drop my investment in being right? Is it your wish to let no dream appear to be the cause of what it is you do? You know, again, and the ego is good. It has lots of ways it can bring up things within the dream that are so powerful, so potent, that it's hard for us to drop them. We don't trust that the Holy Spirit is going to take care of everything, even the worst of the worst. And even whenever we are willing, sometimes we want it to turn out the way we want it to turn out. We're not willing to drop it completely. We drop it with strings attached. You know, okay, I'll drop this as long as you bring it back and make it my way. Are we willing to just drop it completely? I don't know. I don't know. I don't remember being the cause. You know, he even says in this paragraph, you don't even remember the moment you chose this. How could you be the one to fix it? Then let us merely look upon the dream's beginning, for the part you see is but the second part, whose cause lies in the first. And what he means by the dream's beginning is going back to the original moment where we chose to separate from the love of God, and then we took it serious. We chose it for a very good reason, and the reason was we didn't trust God. And unfortunately, guys, we don't trust God at this point either. And that's why the Holy Spirit, or Jesus, says, all I'm asking for is a little willingness right now. I don't want you to dump it, you know, as he said earlier, I don't want you to throw away the dreams completely. I'm asking you for this willingness in this moment. Are you willing to drop it for a moment to let me show you a different answer? But going back to the beginning of the dream is a requirement. Within the context of the dream, I'm never going to be able or willing to be able to drop it, because within the context of the dream, what appears to be real seems very real for me. Only when I rise above the battleground that could be possible. Did I hear a voice? No. Okay. No one asleep and dreaming in the world remembers his attack upon himself. And understand that whenever we attacked God or we killed off God, we not only killed off God, we literally killed off our real identification with who we are. You know, when we were one with God, we had all the attributes of God that were given to us freely. When we turned our back against that, we chose the total and complete opposite. So we not only killed off God, we killed off our identification with God and all the attributes that God gave us, which left us an ability to be in control, the ability to be the maker, but it also brought us the opposite. Love doesn't live here. And as long as we continue to be in charge or be the maker of the world, we're going to reap the effects, which are the opposite of what love is. So again, no one asleep, dreaming in the world remembers his attack upon himself. What are you talking about? I'm an innocent victim. I popped into the world X amount of years. I didn't even ask to be born. How could I be the one that's responsible? Within the context of the dream, that's not an option. No one believes there really was a time when he knew nothing of a body and could never have conceived this world as real. And certainly, none of us remember a time where we had no body. In fact, most of us are challenged even for a moment to even look at the possibility of examining the fact that I'm not a body, because we're so terrified of an experience without my beingness. And that's how deeply seated this thought system is. And we can't just poof that away, but we can, in a moment, be willing to drop it. In another moment, be willing to drop it. In another moment, be willing to drop it. And then slowly, this dream and my identification with the dream becomes less and less potent, powerful, whatever way you want to put it. And my identification with truth begins to expand. He would have seen at once that these ideas are one illusion, too ridiculous for anything but to be laughed away. And if you noticed, I encompassed this dream within a framework because I really wanted to emphasize the concept and the idea of this dream is encompassed and it entails the whole of the dream. And when he talks about the idea, he would have seen at once that these ideas are one illusion. The illusion is complete within itself, and it all comes from the cause of choosing for the ego instead of truth. And there are numerous places in the Course where it talks about the idea of there's no order of difficulties in healing. And the reason why is it doesn't matter which one of these aspects of the dream is taking your peace away. You're either at peace or you're not at peace. Doesn't matter if someone just bombed your house or if you broke your nail and you're not at peace. Well, that makes absolutely no sense within the context of the dream. That's insanity. But with the understanding of you're either in the dream where disruption, conflict, separation occurs, or you're outside of the dream where the opposite is true. So these ideas are one illusion. They're all encompassed in that one complete aspect. And he talks about too ridiculous for anything but to be laughed away. Now, he's not saying if you identify with your body and something bad happens to your body or your loved one or whatever, that you would sit there and laugh at that. That's not what he's saying. But what he's saying is when you awaken to the understanding that this is all a dream, so absolutely all the aspects of this dream are part of the dream, then you would choose for this and you would look back at the silliness of the dream and you would laugh at it. Because why would anybody choose the insanity of a dream that's painful, separating, guilt, sin, and fear, and all the attributes that you get when you choose for the ego, when I could choose for love instead? We would laugh at that, not because we're making fun of it, but because why would I choose that instead of this? How serious they now appear to be. In other words, when we're identified with the ego, they all seem very serious. And how often do people compare the validity of their problem versus somebody else's problem? And we want to one up a person. My problem is worse than your problem is. And if I could have $1 for everyone that's ever said to me in their own way, my problem is the hardest one to get beyond, I would be a very rich girl, because that's what we're all speaking from. Because as the hero of the dream, mine feels like there's no way out, that God couldn't possibly help me with this one, because I've got the prize of the biggest one that can't be undone. And
God
yeah.
can't help you, in the
Well,
ego.
no, that's not what I'm saying. But he can't help us while we're in the ego. That's correct. He
Right.
can only help us if we come out of the dream or we step out of the dream and connect with truth. Yes. Right.
And actually, we are responsible for everything.
Absolutely.
Everything. It's
Absolutely.
nobody else's fault. And
That's correct.
so whatever we don't like, choose again.
Absolutely correct.
And from what I understand, you choose your mother and father.
You got it, bud. Isn't that
Because-
special?
Because you are choosing a life that you need to learn, in this lifetime.
Yep. Well,
So you're responsible for that too.
absolutely. Well, yeah. I mean, we're responsible for the dream we experience.
Right, everything.
Everything. And again, that's why I encompass this in a frame to represent that idea of it's all inclusive.
Right.
A little hard to take at times, don't get me wrong. And, that's not an easy thing to digest for most people when they're starting out. But as we understand this more completely, it does start to make more and more sense of, again, the number one storyline of the ego is, yay, I get to be an innocent victim. So who are my first special relationships? My parents.
Right. But you're not the interested.
Well, you're not, but the setup of this is, I forgot all that took place before. I forgot the cause. I'm now the effect, but I think I'm the cause, and I can't understand why this is not working out the way I thought it should work out.
And a lot of times I find myself making myself the innocent victim. And I got to stop and say, hey, look what you're doing, you stupid jerk. It's you.
Right. But the beauty of that, Bob, is in the past, you were so mindless, you didn't
Yes.
have an option to even consider that. Where now your mind is becoming more awake, so you can begin to catch those moments and go, here we go again. Of course I would do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look what I'm doing.
Here we go again. Yay! But the good news is the only way that you can get out of this is to realize that you were the cause. Okay? Because if something or someone, including God, was the cause, I'm screwed. There's no way I can get out of this.
Right.
Well, the best news is that I did it, because now I can undid it.
Right. And I have all the power.
And you got the power. But it's not the same kind of power that we normally relate to as the power. Yeah, this power is, I don't have any control. Well, how do I want to say it? This power is, I have the power to choose, not to control.
Right.
That'd be a good way to do it. All right. So, and no one can remember when they would have met with laughter and with disbelief. So again, I give the example oftentimes of, if you're a parent and your little kids are all on the floor playing war games, and they've got their soldiers and they're killing each other, and oh, this one's dead and whatever, you walk by and you smile and you say, look at the kids are playing this war game on the floor. But when it's our war game, we take it very seriously. We think real stuff's happening. And I'm not saying pretend that it's not, because we all still very much identify with this dream. We much identify with this character and what happens around the character. But I'm asking that you keep looking at it, and you keep asking to be shown how he sees this, instead of how we were literally set up and programmed to see this. Because then you'll be shown another way of experiencing what we're going through in the world. And as he's saying, eventually that will lead us to a recognition of laughter. And I often say, and I haven't said it for a while, if you think about this as a pile of poop and this is a pile of whipped cream, and you really like whipped cream, why do we keep going to the poop? Because there's just a little bit of whipped cream on that. And we want to remain identified with this. I want to exist. And so we settle for this. But eventually we will laugh at, why would I choose a world of insanity when I could choose a world of love? That's a no-brainer. but to the degree I still want something of the world, I'm not ready to drop it. And that's okay.
Because I think that I am the body.
You think you are the body, absolutely.
And I find it very, very difficult.
Absolutely,
give
Bob.
up.
Absolutely. And I would agree that everybody does.
Because I know nothing else.
Yep. I so agree with you.
Good.
Somebody's making rattles, so let me mute. See if we can. I hope that'll help. Okay, just a couple more lines and then we will say goodbye. All right, we can remember this if we but look directly at their cause. And again, this is a storyline of cause, and this is effect, not effect and cause in the opposite way. And that we have to understand that this whole dream is represented to us because of the cause of choosing to separate from the love of God and then dumping the problem in the world so we can remain an innocent victim without being blamed. And we will see the grounds for laughter, not the cause for fear. So as we keep asking to see through his eyes instead of our eyes, we will begin to make the dream disappear and the truth rise to the surface. The truth that was always there the whole time. The truth that was behind the clouds that we chose to play in because we were afraid of the love of God. And with that, we will say our prayer, and then I'll stay online for a little while if anybody wants to chat. So everybody take a nice big deep breath and let it all go. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. Let us receive only what you have given, and accept but this into the minds which you created and which you love. Amen. And I want to wish everybody who is a father, who has been fathered, a very happy Father's Day. And I hope everybody has a beautiful day. And now everybody's unmuted, so if you want to talk, you can talk.
And a happy
Thank you,
summer.
Marianne.
Thanks, Marianne.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Thank you, Marianne.
Such a powerful and beautiful class as usual on dreams and the body and the expanding definition of power.
Yeah.
Thank you, just glorious. Thank you.
You're so welcome.